Hello everyone and welcome to the finals of the Speed Chess Championship. Alireza Firouzja versus Magnus Carlsen. Yes, it is the first ever Speed Chess Championship final that does not include Hikaru Nakamura, but what are you gonna do? You can't win all of them. He did win the third place match against Hans Niemann. Now we've reached the first break of the tournament. They're running commercials now, so I decided to show you some games. And the first game was a really a fighting one. It ended in a draw. It could have gone either way. Magnus was the one in the lead. Alireza was able to equalize, and in the end, an opposite color bishop endgame was what made players draw the game. Let me just, you've seen nothing. And this is game 2 that we are going to show. So it's Alireza with white pieces, Magnus with black. Let's see what happens here and who will be better. How are you enjoying the match so far? And who do you have as the winner? As we're still in for some 3 more hours of fun and games. So let's check it out. Alireza with white opens with pawn to e4, and we have pawn to e5 by Magnus. I still sometimes reach under the table to fix the audio before I start recording, but I've trained myself so well that even I cannot remember that it's no longer there. We have knight to f3, knight to c6, and bishop to b5. Alireza goes for the Ruy Lopez. We have pawn to a6 by Magnus, Morphy's defense, bishop to a4, and knight to f6. We have castles, bishop to e7, d3, and pawn to b5. So all been seen before. This is the Martinez variation. Bishop to b3, castles kingside. We have pawn to h3, pawn to d6, and pawn to c3. Preparing the standard stuff, and d4 at some point. Knight to b8. Alireza prepares to shift the knight to d7, also to play c5. We have knight b to d2, and knight b to d7. There is a game from 1985 where c5 was played, but here we have knight to d7, knight b d7, and it is now, as of move 10, that we have a completely new game. So okay, rook to e1 by Alireza, bishop to b7 by Magnus, and knight to f1. The knight can now go to g3 to e3, the bishop can come to e3, everything basically you need to prepare. Pawn to d4, as e4 needs to be defended before you execute it. We have knight to c5 and bishop to c2, also will help out with the defense of the e4 pawn. Rook to e8 and knight to g3. We have bishop to f8, and pawn to b4. You don't have to tell Alireza twice. Whenever there's the slightest chance of getting b4 in, you can be sure that Alireza does it, as he's seen it on my channel many times. So b4, knight c to d7, and bishop to b3. The bishop returns to this diagonal, as it is very strong there. Pawn to a5 and pawn to a3. We have pawn to d5 by Magnus, bishop to d2. Continuing development, and now we have pawn to c5, offering a series of trades. And here a capture fest begins. We have e captures on d5, a captures on b4, a captures on b4, rook captures on a1, we have queen captures on a1, c captures on b4, c captures, and bishop captures on d5. Bishop captures on d5, knight captures on d5, and now queen to b2. And it's a very nice position for both players. Pretty equal, everything equal, material, equal pawns everywhere. Okay, it's a d versus e pawn, both players with the dark square bishop, so this is as equal as it gets. We have queen to b8, queen to b3, putting pressure on the knight, and just knight back to b, sorry, not this knight goes to b6, defends the knight on d5, knight to e4, centralizing the knight, and pawn to h6, preparing pawn to f5, but first you want to take away the g5 square from the knights. We have knight to c5, and knight back to f6. Bishop to c3, putting pressure on that e5 pawn, and knight b to d7. Defending and offering a trade, Alireza trades, captures, and queen to d5. A very nice centralizing move by Alireza, going after Magnus's knight to f6, and queen back to b3. We have bishop to d6, and knight to d2. Controlling the d4 square, queen to c7, putting pressure on the bishop, preparing rook to c8, and knight back to e4. We have knight captures on e4, rook captures on e4, probably playing for the win. If d captures, the position is probably just too equal to play for anything. So rook to c8 attacks the bishop, bishop back to b2, and queen to c6. We have pawn to g3, not allowing any back rank issues. It seems like you're blundering a pawn here, but you're really not. If you captured on e5, then queen to c1 check, and after king to h2, as everything else doesn't really make sense, you just capture on e5 with check, and after rook captures queen to f4 with check, you don't even have to capture the rook, because if the king goes back, you're just going to checkmate. And if pawn to g3, then you go after the f2 pawn, king to h1, rook to c1 check, and now you will deliver checkmate once you capture all of the material. So that's why g3 by Alireza, and now rook to e8. Returning, we have rook back to e1 and king to f8. We have bishop to c1, rook to d8, and now bishop to e3. We have bishop to e7 and rook back to c1, attacking the queen, queen to d7, and rook to a1. Queen captures on h3 and rook to a7. So giving up a pawn for activating the rook on the 7th rank. We have queen back to e6 and queen captures on e6. F captures and rook to b7. Alireza goes after the b5 pawn. We have rook to d5 defending, and now king to g2. And this is the mistake that Alireza made this game. You have to play bishop to c5. There's no reason to give up the b4 pawn. But Alireza played king to g2 first, as he is very low on time. You can see it's 2 seconds, and Magnus captures the b4 pawn. Alireza's prized b4 pawn, and now Magnus has a passed b pawn of his own. We have king f3, bishop to c3, king to e4, pawn to b4. Magnus starts pushing it. g4, we have king to g8 and pawn to f3. We have rook to a5, g5. G5 trying to break through the position. H captures, we have bishop captures, and now rook to a1. We have pawn to f4, rook to e1 with check. We have king to f3, and now e captures on f4. We have bishop captures on f4, rook to b1, and now king to e4. Pawn to b3, pawn to d4, and pawn to b2. We have king to d3 attacking the bishop, and rook to d1 with check. So what do you do here? Of course, if you capture, then the pawn queens, and the white has to give up the rook. So king to c2, and now b1 queen with check. Rook captures, we have rook captures on b1, king captures, and bishop captures on d4, and of course with 2 extra pawns, Magnus is completely winning here. King to c2, we have king to f7, and it was in this position on move 61 that Alireza Firouzja resigned the game, and Magnus takes the first win in this Speeches Championship final. And we're also going to check out the third game with colors reversed. Let me just load that up. So here, Magnus with white, Alireza with black. Let's check it out. Also a pretty wild one. Pawn to d4, we have knight to f6, pawn to c4, g6, knight to c3, and bishop to g7. We have the King's Indian defense, and for those of you who really love the King's Indian defense, you will really love this game. e4, we have d6, the standard stuff. We have knight f3, castles, bishop to e2, pawn to e5, and castles. We have pawn to h6, queen to c2, and now there is e captures on d4. In 1985, Pia Kramling had this position against Nava Star, but Pia defeated Nava after e captures on d4 was played, and it's a perfectly fine move, but knight to c6 is the top engine move, and that is what Alireza plays here. It is now as of move 8 that we have a completely new game. So Magnus grabs more space, d5, we have knight to d4, and queen back to d1. Rook to e8, we have bishop to e3, and he captures the bishop with check. Queen captures, and knight to h5, preparing the usual King's Indian stuff. We have knight to e1 and knight to f4. Now, you could capture the knight on f4, but that's not really the way to go. After he captures, the bishop comes alive, and black continues pushing here. You know, people have tried it, but it's much better for black. We have queen to d2. And now pawn to f5. We have pawn to f3, g5, and pawn to c5. In the standard King's Indian defense, black will push on the king side, and white will go for a minority attack on the queen side. We have pawn to b6, c captures on d6, c captures, and rook to c1, grabbing hold of the only open file on the board. F captures on e4, we have f captures, and bishop to a6, attacking the rook, rook to f2, and rook to c8. Alireza rapidly developing his pieces. We have pawn to b4 and queen to d7, developing the queen and connecting rooks. We have pawn to a4 and bishop to c4, not allowing the bishop to be locked out of the game. b5 and rook to c7 now, with the possibility of going rook to e7, rook to f7, but also just doubling up on the c file. Knight to d1 and rook e to c8, doubling up on the c file. Knight to b2 attacks the bishop, and queen to g4. Now you have to be aware of many tricky ideas here, one of them being knight to h3 check, just picking up the rook, and if white moves heavy artillery from the second rank, also you have to worry about checkmate on g2, also if the knight moves. Okay, for the moment it's very nicely protected, but the knight is very annoying on f4. We have king to h1 by Magnus, and knight to h5. We have pawn to a5, bishop captures on b5, and rook captures on c7. Rook captures, a captures on b6, a captures, and now queen to b4, putting pressure on the bishop and the b6 pawn. Queen to d7, defending the bishop, and now bishop captures on b6. Attacking the rook, we have rook to c1, and now we have bishop back to e3. Attacking the rook and rook to b1. And this is very, very annoying for Magnus. Can't really move the knight. The queen also not a lot of good squares. We have rook to c2, and now knight to f6. Queen f7 is also very, very nice for Alireza, but a little time on the clock. It's very hard to figure out what to do after rook to f2. Okay, you stop queen f1, and now queen g6, going after the e4 pawn. Knight will come to f6, and you will capture the pawn. That's what you should do, but a minute on the clock. Knight to f6 right away by Alireza, and now rook to c1. We have rook captures, bishop captures, and now bishop to e2. We have bishop to e3 and queen to g4. We have queen captures on d6, and now queen captures on e4, bishop to g1, and knight captures on d5. So Alireza for the moment up a pawn. We have queen to c6, pinning the knight, and king to h7, getting away from any nasty checks. We have queen to c2, offering a queen trade, and Alireza obliges. Queen captures, we have knight captures, and king to g6, knight to e3, offering a trade of knights, and Alireza declines. Knight to f4, we have knight to a4, and now pawn to e4. Alireza starts advancing his passed pawn, knight to c5, and bishop to d3. Defending the pawn on e4, we have pawn to g3, kicking away the knight, knight e2, and knight captures on d3. Here with bishop to f2, you're still in the game, but after knight captures on d3, Magnus's position is objectively lost, as he will have to give up a piece to stop the passed pawn. Pawn captures on d3, knight to d1, and now knight to c3 as the bishop guards the knight, and you've lost control over the queening square. We have knight to b2, pawn to d2, we have pawn to g4, and Alireza brings a queen into the game. Magnus captures, and Alireza is now up a full knight. We have king to g2, knight to c3, and king to f3, but it's still not easy with both of them being below 10 seconds on the clock. We have knight to d5 and bishop to f2. We have bishop to f6, bishop to g3, and knight to e7. We have bishop to f2, pawn to h5, g captures, king captures, pawn to h3, and knight to g6. So the way for Alireza to win this is to win the h3 pawn, and then advance his pawn to victory. Or, you know, better said, Magnus will have to give up the bishop for the passed pawn, and then Alireza will have to go for the knight bishop checkmate. So bishop to e3, we have king to h4 and king to e4. Magnus is a very tricky defender, so maybe he will be able to defend, but after knight to e7, he was in this position on move 59 that Magnus Carlsen lost on time as his clock ran out. So those were games 2 and 3. Like I said, game 1 ended in a draw. It's a really awesome match. Really awesome moves are being played. So I don't know, who do you have as the winner? Who do you like so far? Where do you think this is going? And of course, he resigned. Even if he didn't lose on time, he would resign, because after you make a move, I mean, okay, the h pawn will fall, and now there's nothing. The pawn will march forward. You will have to give up the bishop at some point, and Magnus will lose, as Alireza will checkmate him with bishop and knight. On the off chance that you don't know by heart how to checkmate with bishop and knight, I've made a tutorial on it some time ago. First link in the description below. Also check it out and increase your vast knowledge while you're at it, because yeah, I mean, you can't just walk around the world without knowing how to checkmate with bishop and knight. It is just silly. So yeah. Those were the games. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Very much looking forward to what will happen next in the match. I would like to thank Frank W.H. Schaefer, Gautam Bhattacharya, Ren Songhua, Joseph Preet, and GrizzlyChessFestival.org.gg for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the finals of the Speed Chess Championship until it finishes. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.